Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel that teaches you more about animals than a zoo will, simply because I'm willing to bet most of you don't even read their signs. My name is Zach, and today we are taking a look at the wildly popular Russia's Grizzly Coast at the Minnesota Zoo, a wonderful imitation of life and landscapes of the Russian Far East region. It has one of the world's most endangered cats, lovable otters. It's gassy, and before we even get far, you will see why the Association of Zoos and Aquariums presented this with the Best Exhibit Award in 2009. So with that covered, let's begin.
When you're done soaking up inspiration from their Discovery Bay Aquarium, your next move should be towards the left side of the park. By the way, when the AZA presented this exhibit award in 2009, it was officially dedicated to the Russia's Grizzly Coast and Central Plaza, one of the zoo's major rest stops. There's a small gift shop area, a cafe, and all of these statues are part of a large seasonal splash pad. Then obviously your next steps should be towards these outcroppings. The designers did a phenomenal job making it feel like you entered a portal out of Minnesota. Not only can you hear the sounds of strong winds and crashing waves, you can even feel their vibrations bouncing off the rocks. That means we are headed into the Pacific shores, the first of the three realms. We're going to ignore that window for a second, and I want you to see that some of the path is littered with debris from a stormy sea, including a bone from a beached whale. It must have washed ashore from these waters, otherwise known as the best sea otter sanctuary I have ever seen. These rescued northern sea otters from Alaska represent the Asian subspecies found near Russia's Commander Islands. Overall, the species is classified as endangered, while the signage in the zoo's Discovery Bay Aquarium highlights ways we can protect ocean life, and their Minnesota Trail tells us how its animals are surviving in Minnesota. The graphics here tell us how these animals are doing in general, and how they play a role in their natural habitat. To keep it short, sea urchins eat kelp. Sea otters eat urchins. Kelp provides food and shelter for other species and is an ingredient in a lot of our products. So if you take away sea otters, kelp forests could disappear. About 300 years ago, it's believed that there were as many as 300,000 sea otters. Explorers, though, discovered how valuable and thick their fur was, which led to a booming fur trade. By the time the hunting was banned in 1911, fewer than 2,000 sea otters were left. Since then, numbers have grown to around 125,000, a little less than halfway there, but it's a start. We are shifting from the shores to the subarctic north, the Kamchatka Peninsula to be exact. Now remember when I called this exhibit gassy? Because who could ever forget someone saying that? If you hear the sounds of boiling water, that's just the mud pot. The Kamchatka Peninsula is one of the world's most geologically charged volcanic regions, home to over 300 volcanoes, and 29 of them are active. A mud pot, though, is a type of hot spring where acidic water breaks down rock into clay and mud. But that's not all. All this volcanic activity formed some pretty visually stunning rock, tunnel, and cave formations that we can walk through. All of this is one large eroded lava tube, what the zoo's sign calls a natural pipe through which lava once flowed, and water and wind have gradually eroded the ends and one side. When this all opened, this tank was originally stocked with salmon, a prominent prey for our next resident. But now it houses common carp to educate visitors about invasive species, although there are carps native to East Asia. The tank was also open-topped, but has since been covered. But at least you can still see into the next enclosure, setting up a predator and prey dynamic between fish and brown bears. In Russia's Far East and along Alaska's coast, they can reach up to 1,300 pounds and stand 10 feet tall. And the zoo says they can thank the fat from salmon to help them get this large before winter. 10,000 to 15,000 live in Kamchatka, reportedly the densest brown bear population in the entire world. Once again, partially thanks to an abundance of salmon. Like the sea otters, these giant fur balls you see are stand-ins for the far eastern brown bear. In 2006, they were found and rescued separately in Alaska's Kenai Peninsula. Their sanctuary here is amazing and often praised as one of the best bear exhibits in America, featuring a gently sloping grassy meadow divided by a stream that falls into a 24,000-gallon pool, which is held by a 26-foot-long viewing window inside the lava tube. The second viewing also gives a fantastic look at the meadow and allows us to get close to the keeper demonstration window. The bears have a digging pit, apparently a self-activated shower, and to remind us of East Russia's explosive features, there's also a geyser. I did read the other day, that rock over there is so tall, the bears can climb it and watch the sea otters. I didn't believe it, and I thought it was maybe something that was written maybe before the exhibit was finished, especially since you can see here that the trees in the background make that impossible. Then I found this, and it turns out when the Grizzly Coast opened, the bears could in fact watch their aquatic neighbors from their own habitat. While the Pacific Shores gets a beached whale, you can't leave the subarctic north without at least glancing at the dig area, where your kids can pretend to dig up a mammoth that disappeared from Russia's mainland 10,000 years ago. And that will move us into the third and final realm, the forested South and the Primorsky Territory, the most southeastern part of Russia. Although what you're about to see covers a lot more ground than just Russia. The European wild boar. Their sign reads, just like a white-tailed deer in Minnesota, boars are very versatile. Without a strong predator population, they can grow like weeds. It's believed they originated in Southeast Asia during the early days of the last ice age. 16 wild subspecies are native to either Eurasia, parts of North Africa, and Indonesia. Since they share the same scientific name, wild boar can also refer to the more familiar feral pigs that cause billions of agricultural damage every year. They were domesticated from Eurasian wild boars over 9,000 years ago and were eventually introduced to every continent but Antarctica, some for livestock, some for hunting. Some escaped while others were released, and over time, these loose pigs developed physical traits similar to a wild boar's, and in some regions the two have interbred. Not to get your hopes up, but boars have been phased out of Russia's Grizzly Coast, but I'm told the zoo is working really hard to get them back. For now, they are represented by Mangalitsas, a very unique and rare breed of Hungarian domestic pig, famous for being the last surviving swine to have a coat of curly hair, which is also why they're known as sheep pigs. I'm not entirely sure why the zoo chose this specific breed to stand in for the boars, but like I implied, almost every domestic pig descended from wild boars. Mangalitsa were developed in the 19th century by crossbreeding several other pigs with European wild boars, so I'd say these curls aren't 100% out of place. The pigs are also visible from a log cabin, which the zoo had custom built in Russia, and it's a conservation haven. It teaches visitors about wildlife and wild things in the Kamchatka Peninsula, the threat of poaching, the steps taken to conserve and save an endangered species, and you can actually change lives at the Make a Difference station and vote with your cash to support conservation programs for sea otters, bears, and big cats. Now, speaking of which, to wrap up this tour, on the other side of the cabin is a remarkable cat from the mountainous forests. Nothing. Fortunately, this is not our only vantage point. Russia's Far East is famous for its vast, rugged wilderness, and even with the few animals you've seen today, you can't argue that its wildlife is diverse. This region is the only place in the world where brown bears, black bears, wolves, tigers, and leopards cross paths. This is the Amur leopard, and if you ever see one, even in a zoo, consider yourself very lucky. They roamed across vast areas of China and the Koreas, but have been confined to a small region along the Russia-China border. When Russia's Grizzly Coast opened in 2008, only 30 remained in the wild, and since then, hope has been slowly rising. Protected areas were created, anti-poaching laws were enforced, some individuals were reintroduced to areas where they went extinct, and though I don't know if anything's come of it, Russia did approve of the idea of introducing leopards born in human care into the wild. And today, that 30 is now somewhere around 125 individuals. From storm-battered shores to volcanic landscapes and dense forests, Russia's Grizzly Coast is a masterclass in immersive design, bringing the rugged beauty of the Russian Far East to the Minnesota Zoo. And I don't know if you've been paying attention or not, hopefully you saw that it's more than just a stunning exhibit. It's a call to action, and one of the few attractions I've ever seen that actually encourages visitors to support global conservation. Not later, but when you are at the zoo looking at this endangered wildlife, proving that zoos can make a real difference. For a very first of its kind exhibit, I'd say the zoo did a pretty good job. And this is where I will leave us for now. And our next adventure on zoo tours will be our last at the Minnesota Zoo for the foreseeable future. And we'll take a multi-mile hike through what is objectively, without a doubt, their greatest exhibit to date. So as always, stay tuned, stay wild, and if you feel like it, use the information that you learned today to go out and make a difference.